Democratic gubernatorial candidates Polis, Donna Lynne, Cary Kennedy, and Mike Johnston faced off in a debate right here in the CPT12 studios that airs tonight at 9 p.m. I was joined by our very own Eric Sonderman and CBS 4 political specialist Sean Boyd. Education, transportation, and a newly released attack ad produced by a group supporting Cary Kennedy were among the topics discussed. Patty, we were excited to have you here for the taping on Wednesday. You got a chance to see it. What did you think? What were the takeaways for you?
Well, the most entertaining moment was watching you twirl your pen. I was sitting in the control room as people needed to speed it up towards the end, but that is one viewers will not see tonight. Otherwise, I had zoomed over here because it was the first really negative campaign day that 527 Teachers for Kennedy had bought a big ad buy and also was sending out flyers attacking Polis and Johnston specifically, and I would say inaccurately. So I wanted to see how they would respond. I think it's the first televised debate with all four because Polis missed the one at Channel 9 in April. So to watch them all respond was interesting. Sticking with the Olympic theme, Cary Kennedy was like a gymnast who stuck the landing. She did not waver for a second, and that included answering Sean Boyd's question. She didn't do that either, but she just stuck to her message. Whether she landed in the right place for Colorado voters is going to be a little tougher to figure out because there's no polling right now. But I thought they were all very good. We would be in good hands with any of them.
I always enjoy our debates, but I like when you get to hear it from the candidate's mouth, and on a variety of issues, you just get something completely different than you get from 30-second ads. Again, that's tonight at 9 o'clock. David, I probably didn't get a chance to watch the debate yet. It's not yet broadcast, but when you see some of these attack ads, and specifically this one going to charter schools and things like that, I don't know if that plays as such a negative ad as maybe the teachers union would expect it to.
Well, I would disagree with Governor Hickenlooper, who deplored the ad. The fact is, you have in this race with four candidates, on most issues they're very, very similar, and this ad highlights a real important difference between Cary Kennedy and two of her opponents. Cary Kennedy is A+ down the line for unions, period, in all circumstances at all times. Unlike Cary Kennedy, Polis and Mike Johnston have substantial experience in education, and they sometimes balance the union interests versus the interests of the students and families. So that's a large contrast, and I think voters on either side of that are better off for knowing about it. And I would say if Johnston and Polis, instead of complaining about things, fight back and draw attention to this issue, this will probably help them in the general, should either be the nominee in the general election, because I think most voters agree with, for example, like the thing that Mike Johnston voted for along with plenty of other Democrats and Republicans, that says there's got to be some mechanism to, at least over a period of years, a teacher who is consistently ineffective in the classroom has to be gotten out of the classroom. If you're agree with that, you'd be for Johnston. If you disagree with that, you'd be for Kennedy.
Eric, as we said in the setup, you were there, and I think you asked one of my very favorite questions of the debate when you pressed them on what happened at the state convention when the Democrats for Education Reform were forced to, at least from the convention's point of view, to strike Democrats from their name because they had the temerity to disagree on something about education. The answers were interesting. What were your takeaways being right there at the front row seat?
What was more interesting, Dominic, than the answers were the non-answers. It strikes me that Cary Kennedy is increasingly dictating the terms of this campaign. She is becoming, I think she has claimed the front-runner status, not that she's went out and grabbed it, but it's been, the polls and others have given it to her. Hickenlooper referenced as much in his minor castigation of her. And it just feels like everyone is now reacting to Cary Kennedy. Cary is incredibly smooth and polished these days. She's not the person that all of us came to know on the political scene years ago, who was sort of this free thinker, say what's on her mind, glib, obviously with the brain firing very quickly. She now is scripted and programmed and on message relentlessly. She reminded me in some ways at that debate, I hadn't seen a politician so relentlessly on message since maybe Cory Gardner 4 years ago. Now the difference is Cory Gardner is able to stay on message no matter what question you ask him, but not look like it's quite so practiced. And in Cary's case, it does come across as very practiced. She was not going to answer that question about DFER, no matter how many times it was asked, no matter if I was asking a follow-up, if Mike Johnston or others were pushing her. And on other questions as well, she has her script and she is sticking to it. It is working for her. It is working for her at the moment. What is interesting to me is, if you look at the Democratic governors in recent and even not all that recent memory in Colorado, they'd all be classified at some level as an ed reformer. You go back to Dick Lamb, who was very openly critical of the teachers union in his day and since. Roy Romer was he signed the first charter school law that authorized charters in the state. After he was governor, he went on and became a very reform-minded superintendent of the Los Angeles School District. Bill Ritter signed Senate Bill 191, and let's not forget who he picked for an appointment to the U.S. Senate, Michael Bennett, who was then the superintendent of Denver Public Schools. John Hickenlooper has clearly come down on that side of this divide. It's an interesting divide that has emerged in this race. It has become the wedge issue in this race because there really aren't any other wedges that divide these candidates. Cary has some running room. She's picked some real estate where everyone else is fighting over you have three people fighting over one chunk of real estate, and Cary owns the other chunk of real estate by herself.
Penn, one of the things that I noticed was one of the first times, as Patty noted, that people will be able to see on television all four candidates right there talking with one another, bringing up the issues, and one of the faces they haven't seen as often is Donna Lynne. We've seen her arm in the tattoo ad, but we haven't seen as often. She just had the same media buy, I get that. But it's also not that she's been a major high-profile lieutenant governor. So when it comes to introducing herself to candidates, or introducing herself to voters, this would be one of the peak times now doing more television. What difference does a televised debate make? I'm a public television nonprofit guy. I think they make a whole heck of a difference. I'm a little biased. You've been out there, you've been a candidate, you've been part of the different campaigns. Does it make a difference?
I think they do, and I think they make a difference from two perspectives. You'll notice, and I think to Eric's point and some of the others, the candidates were on message, they were on script, they said what they wanted to say. That doesn't happen by accident. You know, it's an opportunity where you get to frame it to the best you can, the context of how you deliver what your message is and what your vision is for the state. So it's important from a candidate point of view. I think in many instances, a lot of the folks who watch the debates are there to root for their candidate so that many of the viewers have their minds made up. But I also know that many of the viewers don't. And remember, this is the first time in our political cycles that unaffiliated voters will be able to vote in a primary. So none of us is quite certain how that dynamic is going to play. So I think the debates are important, and I think they're really important for Donna Lynne because of the four candidates, although she's the current lieutenant governor and chief operating officer and essentially has been doing the job for 2 years, she's the only one who's never run for office before. So she doesn't have the perspective. In many ways, this works for her. She's not a quote-unquote politician. She hasn't run a campaign before, but she hasn't run a campaign before. And in terms of the wedge issue, I'm dying to see it tonight. I couldn't stream it live yesterday. But the education piece, I think, is interesting because when you take into consideration the unaffiliated voter, I'm not certain that that's particularly the issue that they care about. I think our lightning round topic is a better indication. It's growth, it's congestion, it's quality of life, and that really speaks to the issues of housing, transportation, healthcare, some of these other issues, not necessarily K-12 education.